Um, so Jack, where do you think you're going to go? You're going from here. Are you going to carry on just the way you've been doing it, or how do you think see your work evolving in time?
Well, I guess technically, um, I still aspire to keep the work more probably at the level it's at. I mean, I'm mid-career now, and I think to maintain the level of technical ability that I have to reach even higher. Because there's a little bit of slippage, and I think if you reach beyond where you currently are, that's what it takes to maintain your current status.
I see.
If that
Yes.
makes sense.
Yeah.
You don't say, well, I'm happy where I'm at. I'm going to stay there. I mean, that's complacency,
Hmm.
and I think our nature is to actually, when we become complacent, we slip. I mean, and
Yeah.
you will slip down.
Yeah.
So I constantly keep reaching higher and higher to stay where I'm at currently. So I don't know that technically I can do a whole lot more with my work, or that I necessarily want to. But I think as far as content, um, again, the sea, as we've discussed, is huge, this huge realm, this huge domain,
Yes.
and there's so much to it. And I think that's what I'm exploring. It's not, how can I paint water better, or how many boats can I paint, or this kind of thing. It's like, what else represents that feeling of the sea? And
Hmm.
they're inanimate still life objects. What do I come across, and how can I present them that is new and different for me, but yet still resonates with people. When they look at it, it's like that's the spirit of the sea right there. So I think that's my quest. Is to continue to explore some conceptual realm. Is what
Yeah.
how else
Well,
can the sea reveal itself to
wow.
me?
It's a
And
never-ending. You never need to end that quest. There's
it's
no
like
end to it.
it's like studying the stars. I mean, it's
Yes.
you're not only going spatially. I think you're also going in time, which is something else that I do. I tend to go back in history and sort of use historical references in my work. And so when you're doing that, I mean, you're going into another dimension. So it's the possibilities are endless. I think that's probably what, if any, movement will take place. It will be what subject matter and how will I present it. How differently can I present it
Okay.
to still manifest the same feeling of the sea.
Yeah. Sure. I'm I'm finding myself. I kind of missed in the previous question that I had kind of dropped it, but maybe I could ask you now. It's like, do you work with as they did in the 17th century, with the same, to try to find the same, as some people do, to try to find the same materials, grind your own paints, you know, that kind of stuff. And go back to, original old-fashioned lead-based stuff and so on and so forth. Do you find yourself trying to recreate the
I,
methods as
I,
well as the way of doing it?
there was a time that I was interested in doing that because I felt that somehow that would work its way into the painting, and and I've read several accounts that um, the artists back then, yes, they did have they went through the apprenticeship, which we really don't do much anymore. So as kids, they learned to do this, and later they had the skills to do it, but then they would have an apprentice come in their studios to grind the paints, etc.
Yes, sure.
But that was done because they didn't have two paints.
Right.
And I'm absolutely convinced that if Vermeer or Franz Hals or Rembrandt even, or Jan Steen, any of these guys, I'm convinced if two paints had been there, they would have used them.
For
But
sure.
they did have what they called color men,
Yes.
and they would go around selling paints. So I think it's kind of a misconception to think
Yes.
that's really the way it was done. Prior to the 17th century, yeah, I think it all had to be done in the artist studio. But probably about that time, you know, you had specialists, you had panel makers, you had people who made the canvas, people who gessoed the canvas. So the artist, you know, became a specialist. So I really don't feel the need to do that, but as far as pigments go, to the extent that some are still available, like lead white, like lapis lazuli, you know, some of these things I do use. I use lead white extensively for many reasons. It's an amazing pigment, but it's also acidic and it makes paints dry a little bit quicker, and it's an excellent dryer, and you know, and there is that historical relevance to it.
Sure.
But you know, whatever modern tool is available, you know, photography,
Sure.
whatever, you know, I use it all.
Yeah. Why not? I mean, anybody in history, throughout our history of mankind, has used the tools that were available at the time.
Absolutely. Oh yeah.
That's how we make progress. I used to watch my mother. She was a good painter. I used to watch her. I remember watching her mixing her colors, oil. Before she ever started the painting, she would mix the colors and she'd put them into open back tubes. She'd fill the tube with the color that she wanted, and then she'd roll up the back to seal it in there, and then take the cap off when she wanted. So, you know, she'd get her stuff all ready before she went to work, which is kind of interesting.
Well, you know, painting it's difficult enough, you know, both to manipulate the paint properly and technically. I mean, you can run into some serious technical problems. And so my perspective is, you know, why make your job more difficult than you need to?
Yeah.
And nobody can make paint better than the people who are making it today. I mean, you know, they've got the technology, they've got the history, and so why would I want to mess it up and try to do it myself?
That's right.
You know?
I've thought of something else I wanted to ask you too, and that is in your thoughts and looking at the ocean, what about the dark side of it, like the way in which our human presence on the planet is starting to pollute oceans, and as well as land, oceans. I wonder if any of that has ever crept into any of your work, or if you think you might find yourself wanting to express that in some way. It just occurred to me.
Yeah, well, we're pretty fortunate here on the coast of North Carolina, and I know what you're saying is more of a global consciousness. It's a global awareness, and I don't think it can be, you know, regionalized. In other words, but we're fortunate here in North Carolina that we've pretty much set limits on like offshore drilling and that sort of thing. Development, while it has occurred, hasn't been so rampant to the point that it's become, you know, a real negative. It's negatively impacting the coast. But I think as far as, you know, what I try to do with the subject of the sea, and it does stay in the back of my mind that I'm painting this because it is beautiful, and you know, you can look out there and see the same ocean that they saw centuries ago.
Yes.
You know, you don't have the oil platforms, the rigs, and the dead birds washing ashore, at least here. Maybe my expression as far as any environmental impacts that have had negative impacts that have taken place lately is showing the beauty of the coast. You know, instead of trying to present, you know, what can go wrong or man's negative effects on the sea. Well, you're just simply presenting the problem.
Yeah.
I think one way to make a case for cleanup or keeping it pristine is to present the beauty. I mean, show people this is what we want. This is the ideal.
Yeah.
And maybe by contrast, you know, when they see the other things like, you know, the news stories of the oil well, you know, blowing out, and which, by the way, ironically, almost affected the North Carolina coast because of the Gulf Stream, and they had that oil well down in the Gulf of Mexico.
Yes.
it started to creep around the tip of Florida and could have made its way up to North Carolina. So, yes,
God.
what happens in one part of the ocean can affect everybody.
Sure.
And I was deeply concerned about it, but again, it's not like I felt some desire or some need to make a statement by painting something dark or presenting something dark.
Yeah.
This is what can happen.
Well, I guess I would just really pray that my great grandchildren that they wouldn't have to think that the only place where they can see the beauty of the sea is in your paintings.
The sea. It's something that the one thing we do have to keep an eye on, I guess, is the sea level rise.
Sure.
And so the folks that are currently inland may soon be waterfront. It may be a growing market.
Sure. You're a historian anyway. Like, as an artist, you're a historian as well of what you see.
Right. Well, yeah, you're capturing not just images, but reactions and responses to things. And, I guess in that context, the things will live longer than me and will record some emotion. I mean, on my part, it's probably just, as you were stating, some pleasant experience by the sea, or some way that this artist compiled subjects to make an expression of what he felt the spirit of the sea was. But they are contemporary statements, and so I guess for posterity there will be a record of what I did.